What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going over my entire Game Boy Advance collection. So now this is all the games that I have. Most of them are from my childhood, and I'll kind of touch on, which ones I've picked up over the past, 10 years or so that weren't really from my childhood, but then I'll talk about all the games that are from my childhood and go over all these games right here in the back. So let's start with the consoles themselves. I have this one right here, which is a Game Boy Advance SP AGS 001 model. So right there, you can tell the model number right there, AGS 001 model. So what is the AGS 001? It is the model that has a front lit screen. So not a backlit screen, a front lit screen. And then instead of turning on the brightness or turning up the brightness like you have on the AGS 101 model, let me just double check, make sure. Yep, the 101 model, I always try and keep those numbers straight. You can turn off the front light or you can have it on. So if you're playing in a well-lit area, you can play without the front light on. But if you are playing, of course, in the dark, the front light helps. But the screen definitely looks quite faded. I have covered that in my comparison of both of these systems in the past. You guys can check out that video on my channel. So there's another little brightness comparison. This is the low brightness setting on the Game Boy Advance SP 101, and then the high brightness. So low brightness and then high brightness. So the backlit screen just looks so nice, right? That backlit screen is just phenomenal and looks incredible. And then, of course, the front lit screen on this one, no front light and with the front light on. So that is the difference between these two. And the AGS 101 is the one that I've had since my childhood, and then the AGS 001 I picked up, I can't even remember, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. I have plans, and I still have plans, to do some modifications to this one, because for those of you that don't know, you definitely have to look up if you don't know, but there's some really cool modifications you can do for the Game Boy Advance SP and also the Game Boy Advance. The AGB model, I believe is what it's called, the widescreen or wide model, the one that's not the clamshell model. So there's a lot of really cool modifications you can do these things, from a rechargeable battery with a USB-C port, and then you can change the shells on these, which is one of the easier modifications you can do. And then also you can change the screen to an IPS screen, which is what I want to do with this one. Someday I'm going to change this to an IPS screen, and I'm going to also change up the shell, is my plan. And also I want to add in the USB-C charging and rechargeable battery. That way, I think the USB-C port would just be such a cool modification to do, because you can find USB-C wires and chargers everywhere for your phones and other things. So I just think that'd be a really handy modification, instead of having the old school charging port, which of course, unless if you have a charger already, it's kind of hard to come by one. Seems like the third-party ones are your best option. OEM chargers for Game Boy Advances have also gone pretty insane as well, pretty expensive. And yeah, so that's my plans with this guy, and then I'm just going to leave this one the way it is, because this is perfect the way it is. I just want to soup up this one and make it a really powerful Game Boy Advance SP with a IPS screen, a nice new shell, and USB-C charging port. So that is my plan for that one, and then this one's going to just stay the way it is because it works great. So those are both my consoles, both Game Boy Advance SPs, two different models though. If you're going to plan, I just want to talk about this a little bit quickly before I go into all the games. If you are going to buy a Game Boy Advance SP, and you want to spend a little bit more money because you don't want to mod it and you want to get a better screen, go with the AGS 101 model, or buy a Nintendo DS Lite or a Nintendo DS. Nintendo DSs and DS Lites are pretty cheap, and they can play Game Boy Advance games. So there's options that are a little bit cheaper, but if you're like me and you want to try and do some soldering and do a little bit of modding as a fun little hobby, then it doesn't really hurt to pick up a AGS 001 and throw in some modifications to it and just have a little bit of a fun hobby to do. So that's my plan with that one. So let's get into all these games now. There's quite a bit of games here. So this whole stack right here, we got Nicktoons Unite for the Game Boy Advance. This one was also available on the GameCube, and I think it might have been on the PS2 and Xbox Original, I'm not really sure, but this is, of course, the Game Boy Advance version. I remember absolutely loving this game, and someday I'm going to replay some of these Nicktoons games, because I used to love this game. I remember having so much fun with it. All the different Nicktoons characters you could play as, with like SpongeBob, Danny Phantom, Timmy Turner. Like, there was just some really, really cool ones that you could play as, and I remember it being a really, really fun game when I was a kid, so someday I'll dive back into it. Now we got Uno, which, I mean, Uno was just Uno, so there's not really much to touch on that. That is Uno for the Game Boy Advance. And then we got Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I remember really enjoying this game, so it's made by Ubisoft, so I have to definitely play it again and see if my memory actually lives up to how the game actually is. So that is Star Wars Episode 3. Next we got Tak. Tak, the Great Juju Challenge. I remember not really enjoying this game. I played it for a little while, and then I was just like, it was mediocre. Maybe I have to give it another shot again, but I remember it just being mediocre at best. So that is that first little stack right there. Then we got all of the Mario games that I have, which isn't that many. Oh, I also have Mario Super Circuit somewhere. I'm not really sure where it is. I literally did a video on it not too long ago. So Super Mario World, Super Mario Advance 2. We have that one right here. So just a remake of Super Mario World, but for the Game Boy Advance. I wouldn't even really call it a remake. It was literally just a direct port. One of those, like, one of the common things on the Game Boy Advance was porting SNES games over. So you had Donkey Kong Country as well. And then you had all the Super Mario games. So you had Super Mario Brothers 3, Super Mario World, Super Mario Brothers 2. Like, you had lots of ports, and also Yoshi's Island, I guess, as well. So lots of ports from the SNES over. So this is literally just Super Mario World from the SNES, but in Game Boy Advance handheld form. And then we got Mario Tennis Power Tour, one of the most underrated Mario like sports games ever. It's just, these games are incredible because you play as different characters than actually like Mario, and they got RPG elements, and I still want to make a full-fledged Gems of the GBA episode on this. I've been meaning to. So someday I'm going to get this Gems of the GBA episode done on this, because it's just such an incredible game and it deserves more love. And same with Mario, the Mario Golf one on the GBA was similar as well, with RPG elements and just changing things up a little bit. But this game is incredible. Highly recommend you guys check it out if you haven't. I feel like it's so underrated and just nobody really knows about it. So that is Mario Tennis Power Tour. Then we got Wario Land 4. Wario Land 4 is a typical Wario Land game where you play as Wario, and it's kind of similar, you know, side-scrolling action and everything as the Mario games. Just, yeah, it's Wario Land. It's good. Wario is kind of a goofy character, and I really, really enjoy Wario Land on the original Game Boy. I absolutely loved Super Mario Land 3, I believe it was called, Wario Land. That one I absolutely loved, and this one, same thing. Wario's just trying to collect all the treasures and all the gold, and it's just a really, really good game. These Wario Land games are a lot of fun, and they're a little goofy as well, so definitely try those games if you haven't. Now let's get into some of the Dragon Ball games. So starting with Dragon Ball Z Supersonic Warriors. This game actually isn't that bad. It's a Game Boy Advance Dragon Ball Z fighting game, but it's like, even though it's on the Game Boy Advance, it kind of tries to use some 3D aspects to it, so it's a little different. I actually need to make a video on this game because I have really enjoyed it. It's still fun to hop back on and play through because it's just, yeah, it's a handheld Dragon Ball fighting game, and probably one of the best ones, if not the best Dragon Ball fighting game on the GBA, because you had Taiketsu, which oh man, I played that game years ago. One of my friends lent it to me when we were in like elementary school, and oh man, that game was just awful. It was so bad. Taiketsu, I just remember not being very good, and the characters being so unbalanced. And then you got Supersonic Warriors was actually not bad, so I need to make a video on that game at some point. Definitely need to do one very, very soon. So we got Dragon Ball Z Boo's Fury, incredible game. one of my favorites, action RPG, same as Legacy of Goku and Legacy of Goku 2, but Boo's Fury and Legacy of Goku 2 are the two best. The original Legacy of Goku was not very good at all. Hit detection was awful, and it just didn't play very good. It just seemed like they probably rushed development and they didn't polish any of the gameplay up enough. Like, it just wasn't good. But Dragon Ball Z Boo's Fury, the only knock on this game I can really give it is that it's very, very easy compared to Legacy of Goku 2. Legacy of Goku 2 has like a good amount of challenge to it, but Boo's Fury was very, very easy. That's literally the only knock I can give it. It's still an incredible game, and I highly recommend you guys try it out if you haven't already. So that is Boo's Fury. Now we're going to get into what I believe is the most underrated or unheard of Dragon Ball game. Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure is incredible. It is a side-scrolling beat-em-up action game on the Game Boy Advance where you play as Goku from the start of the original Dragon Ball anime until he takes on King Piccolo. And it is incredible. This game handles so nicely. The level design was really good. The boss fights were very, very well designed as well. And I just highly recommend you guys check this game out. It is absolutely incredible, and it is so sad that it is this like underrated as it is, and that nobody's like literally ever heard of it. I just find so many people don't even know that it even exists. So try it out. Dragon Ball Advanced Adventure. It is extremely expensive if you're going to get a physical cartridge nowadays, though, so emulation is probably your best bet. Just a fair warning, like, it is one of the most expensive Game Boy Advance games by far. And then we got Dragon Ball Z, The Legacy of Goku 2, action RPG, incredible game, goes over the Cell Saga from the Dragon Ball Z anime, and it is just a phenomenal game. You know, not much else to really touch on than what I touched on with Boo's Fury. Action RPG, very, very good game, just incredible, and a little bit more challenging than Boo's Fury, but that is Dragon Ball Z, The Legacy of Goku 2. Now we got the two Metroid games. Metroid Zero Mission, my favorite Metroid game in the entire series, a remake of the very first Metroid. This game handles so good, and it is just an incredible remake of the very first Metroid game. I tried playing the very first Metroid game. I couldn't play it. It was just kind of hard and aged. I find a lot of those NES games are just, they haven't aged all that well, which probably breaks the heart of a lot of people that grew up with those games, but I just find them very, very tough to play through because I grew up with the PS2 and the Game Boy Advance and the Nintendo DS eventually then too, and the Xbox 360 was all that was all around my childhood, the GameCube as well. So I grew up with when the games were a little bit not so clunky, and you needed to literally have like there was so many hidden things in those old NES games, whereas this one got rid of a lot of those, and it just was much, much better to play than the original Metroid. But Metroid Zero Mission, my favorite Metroid game in the whole series. It is just such an incredible remake. If you guys haven't played it, I highly recommend you play it. It's also going up in value like crazy. It's a very expensive game as well, so, you know, you can buy it physically if you want, or just emulate. Like, a lot of these Game Boy Advance games are really starting to go crazy in value. So then we also got Metroid Fusion. Another incredible Metroid game. It is so good. Metroid Fusion is incredible, and it came out earlier in the Game Boy Advance life cycle, so it is very, very, the colors on this game are very, very potent and bright to combat the original Game Boy Advance AGB model having a non-front lit or non-backlit screen. So they had to have very, very potent, vibrant colors to stand out on that dull screen. So this game is an incredible game, and you definitely can tell it was on the earlier end of the Game Boy Advance life cycle because the colors are just completely poke at you like crazy if you played on a backlit screen console. It's just, yeah, the colors are a little crazy. And now let's get into all the Pokemon games here. So we got ourselves Pokemon Emerald. Incredible game. Not really lots to touch on here. Pokemon Emerald is one of my favorite. Like all these Game Boy Advance Pokemon games are my favorites in the entire series. So Pokemon Ruby Sapphire and Emerald are all my favorites. Like Fire Red, Leaf Green are my actually two favorite are my favorite games in the entire series, and then probably my second favorite is Ruby Sapphire Emerald. Just such incredible games, and I love them. They have so much nostalgia for me, and I always go back and play them. Just such incredible games, and the Hoenn region was phenomenal. So Ruby Sapphire and Emerald, and then we got Fire Red and Leaf Green remakes of the original Red and Blue, and so Fire Red and Leaf Green, incredible games. These are my two favorites in the entire series. I just love the Kanto region, and I also love the Sevi Islands after game. These games are incredible. The Game Boy Advance graphics just they in general just kind of hit me in the nostalgia, right? Like I see the Pokemon sprites in the Game Boy Advance games, and I just think, oh yeah, they look so amazing. I think they look far better than the newer sprites of the Pokemon in the newer games, but that's just me because I grew up with these games. So Fire Red and Leaf Green. Now I definitely do have Mario Kart Super Circuit and a few other games sitting around somewhere, so I'm gonna go pick those up and then go over them as well. All right, so I found the last 5 games here. I knew I had some more sitting around somewhere. So found them all sitting in my other spare Nintendo DS case. So Avatar: The Last Airbender, I remember being an all right game. Yeah, I definitely need to play it again because I don't remember too much about it, but I remember enjoying it a little bit. So definitely have to play that game again. That is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Then we got these two games I might as well cover side by side. Smashing Driver and Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer. Both of these games I don't really remember. I remember enjoying this game maybe a little bit. The Smashing Driver one, it was kind of just you drove into stuff and demolished cars and buildings and whatever else it was. I don't really remember, but I just remember kind of being like not really that exciting. And then this game I remember not being very good. So that's those two games. They're mediocre. And then we got Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island. I remember also really enjoying this game as well growing up. This one with Nicktoons Unite, I just loved both of them. The Nicktoons games were incredible, and this one I remember really enjoying as well. So that is Nicktoons Battle for Volcano Island. And then lastly, Mario Kart Super Circuit. It's an okay game. Mario Kart DS is my favorite Mario Kart game. Mario Kart Super Circuit just is super slippery and handles weird. Like, I don't know why they made it. Like, every single time you drift around the corner, you go so wide and you slide around and the controls just aren't very good. And, yeah, it's Mario Kart Super Circuit. It wasn't terrible, but it's really one of the hardest Mario Kart games. So, for that reason, it's not my favorite. Probably my least favorite Mario Kart game, but still have it in the collection, so that is all the games. I'm just going to bring them out front here and then go over them one final time. So yeah, that is my entire Game Boy Advance game collection and console collection. So I also have game cases as well, which are good. They carry lots of Game Boy Advance games, DS games, and then also my Game Boy Advance or my DS, 3DS, like whatever I want to travel with. Like they're nice traveling cases. And then, yeah, I have usually just these kind of sitting. I have a little, I have a little container where I keep all my games whenever I'm not traveling. And then whenever I'm traveling, I'm like, oh, these games might be nice. So then I just throw them in my traveling cases and take them with me. But I still absolutely love the Game Boy Advance. It is my favorite handheld console of all time. And I just love everything it has to offer. It has such an incredible library. And it really sucked that it had such a short life cycle, really, because the DS came out, I think, only 3 or 4 years after the Game Boy Advance was out, so it really wasn't very long. I'm pretty sure the Game Boy Advance came out in 2001, and then the original DS came out in 2004, I believe. You guys can let me know if I'm wrong down in the comments below, but I believe that's, like, it was cut very short. So still one of my favorite consoles, handheld consoles of all time. My favorite handheld console, one of my favorite consoles in general of all time. And so many incredible games here, so much nostalgia here with all these games. And yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. And if you did, leave a like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you all in the next one.